Good morning, everybody. My name is Clive Weinstein. I see we have approximately 17 attendees and probably more joining as we go. A little bit of a brief introduction of myself. As I said, my name is Clive Weinstein. I am the UserInsight sales specialist at Rapid7 for EMEA. And I'm presenting today on behalf of Foursys, and they find the true vulnerabilities in and around your organization and network. Today I'm going to introduce you to a product called UserInsight, which as I go through things will be fairly unique to you. It is a UBA product, so it's basically a product that's designed to look for anonymous user behavior on your networks and also give you true visibility into what your users are doing across your network. So I think without further ado, let me start off with an agenda of what I'm going to be doing and the format I'm going to be following for today's session. It's going to take approximately 45 minutes to go through the demo of the product, at which point I'd very much appreciate any questions. However, that said, I know a lot of you probably will be on a mute during this session. However, if you feel a pressing need to ask a question in the demo, by all means, take yourself off mute, and I'll hopefully answer the question. I'm sure everybody will find it quite beneficial. So, format and agenda will be as follows. I will be talking a little bit about the history of UserInsight and why we at Rapid7 developed the product. I'll talk a little bit about the architectural requirements for the product, and then I will actually show you and demo the product, finishing off with a real live investigation, and you'll see how beneficial the product will be for you. So let's get started. Why did we at Rapid7 actually develop this product? The history of the product started approximately, or development of the product started approximately 3 years ago. And it started because of a pen test done with our Metasploit product. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of our Metasploit product. For those of you that aren't, it is a world-leading pen testing tool. It has an open source community of over 200,000 people. So what we effectively did was we said to our internal pen testers, of which there are approximately about 150, give or take, please pen test our network. We want to see the main attack vectors you are using to get onto your network. What they came back with and what we saw was compromised credentials, usernames and passwords. Effectively, if an attacker has my username and password, they are effectively me, and there is nothing in the world that will detect them as otherwise. They will effectively be me. We discovered at that point that there was no product on the market to deal with that type of attack or to sniff out compromised credentials. So we started to develop UserInsight specifically for that purpose. That said, the product has grown up a lot since then and does a lot more than just compromised credentials. The reason I also talked to you a little bit about the history of the product is that I wanted to basically say that it's not a Gen 1 product. It is most definitely a mature solution, although it is fairly unique, and you'll see how unique as I go through the product this morning. Additionally, as we were developing the product, it started to take a look and feel of a SIEM. Now, as all of you probably are aware, a SIEM is a security incident and event management tool, very powerful, developed primarily around the need for compliance, and that being PCI compliance. However, as we started to develop the tool and it started to take on the look and feel of a SIEM, we discovered and we decided at that point we did not want to create a traditional SIEM in the true sense of the word. The reason we didn't want to create a traditional SIEM was because effectively we felt that SIEMs created way too much data fatigue and way too much alert fatigue. And we wanted to effectively make a product which freed up the administrator to get on and do his job effectively without having to create multiple rules and be bogged down with multiple alerts and multiple amounts of data and log data. Additionally, we also developed this product around the fact that we felt that analytics was great, and analytics and algorithms were required and necessary to deal with a product like this. However, you also needed a human component. You needed a human aspect. So what we did was we discovered that with our Metasploit product and our open source community and internal pen testers, we effectively could very much create that human element. So as the attacker changes the way they work, we can understand the attacker mindset and we can fine-tune the rules in the product. So analytics are important, however, they're not the end and end all of everything. You effectively also need to understand the attacker mindset. Okay, without further ado, let's demo the product and let's talk a little bit about the architecture. Firstly, the architecture of the product. Much like a SIM, the product plugs into event sources across your network. Now, it needs 3 main foundation event sources and a 4th, what we term nice to have. So what are those 3 main foundation event sources? They are Active Directory, LDAP, and DHCP. The 4th nice to have is anything else that generates a security event log. So firewalls, existing SIMs, IDS systems, anti-malware solutions, anything that will generate a security event log. Now, why are the 3 main foundation event sources so important? The product needs to understand the user first and foremost as a priority, and it gets that information from AD and LDAP. And it also then needs to understand how that user interacts with their asset, and it gets that information from DHCP. So, an attacker will always operate the same way. Effectively, what they'll do is they'll use whatever stealthy means they can to get onto your network, whether it be a phishing campaign or pass the hash attack. They will find whatever methodology they can to get onto your network. But once they're on your network, they will effectively start to impersonate other users, escalate their privilege. They will then start to move laterally across the network. They will then drop malware onto machines, keyloggers, scraping, whatever else they can to start stealing information. They will operate the same way every single time. Now, by plugging into the 3 main foundation event sources, being AD, LDAP, and DHCP, we're going to use understanding for the user on the network, and we also get an understanding for how they're moving across the network with their assets. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the product. First thing I'm going to highlight with the product is that this dashboard is designed to be easy to use. Everything on this dashboard is designed to be highly functional and easy to use. I can't stress that enough. It is designed to free you up. So what you don't see is green lights and red lights and flashing numbers that mean absolutely nothing. Everything on the dashboard is highly functional and designed to be used. Normally, I would start showing UserInsight by the Ingress location, but I'm going to highlight now top 5 risky users because it's new and it was born out of a requirement and a request from a lot of our existing customers. They wanted to see the top 5 risky users in their environment, or they wanted to see the riskiest users in their environment, so we needed to do it cleverly. And that brings me to this spike over here. A spike on any security graph is a bit of a worry. You want to take note. The product is all about log aggregation and easy analytics with an understanding of the attacker mindset. So if I see a spike like that on a graph in UserInsight and I click on it, it will take you straight there as to what happened during that period, and it will show you the riskiest users, and it will give you a timeline of why it's starting to understand why that user, or it's starting to flag that user as a risky user. So as you can see in this instance, this user logged on as a primary asset, they logged onto another asset, then acted onto another asset, and then we saw an incident. So we saw a spike. The product is starting to understand behaviorally that this user is potentially a risky user, and it's flagging it simplistically to you. Now, let's go to Ingress Locations. The product, this is a smaller window of a larger picture. Effectively, it's designed to show you the users in each of the geographic locations. More so, it's designed to show you how easy it is to see users in each of those geographic locations. It's also important for me to bring in a lot of use cases and a lot of stories to try and understand the concept of what this product is trying to achieve. So the first use case is, why would this particular window be important? simplistically speaking, it's important because if somebody is logging into onto your network, for example, in London this morning, and suddenly 15 minutes later they start logging in from Nigeria or an obscure portion of Russia, the product's going to alert and you want to know about it. Additionally, the product is a user behavioral analytics application, so it learns over time. So as you can see over here, it will learn when a user is coming in from a usual location, and it will learn when the user is coming in from their home location, so their business location and their home location. Additionally, if it finds that a user is coming in from an unusual location, you'll get a red flag. From a navigation perspective, on the left-hand side, you can easily see who successfully logged in. You can easily see who's failed to log in. You can add users to a watch list quite simplistically in this product, and I'm going to show you how easy that is to do a little later. Now, besides the obvious reasons for wanting to add a user to a watch list, maybe they're acting in a malicious way, or you're starting to see anomalous user behavior, you might want to add a user to a watch list because the company is unfortunately embarking on a round of redundancies, and you want to watch those users. However, at this point, I'm going to introduce you to the product only alerting on the alerts that matter. Now, what do I mean by that? Going back to what I said, SIMs create a lot of alert fatigue. We understand that your time is valuable and we don't want you chasing your tail. This product is designed to alert only on the alerts that matter. If UserInsight alerts, you've got to set up and take notice, and I'm going to explain to you exactly how we do that. However, that said, in this instance, if you add users to a watch list, they become a lot more sensitive to alerts. So you will start to get a lot more alerts on that particular user. In fact, everything that user will do, you will start to get an alert on. So it takes away from the concept a little bit of alerting only on the alerts that matter. Unusual behavior refers back to logging into two locations or two disparate locations in a short period of time, as I just explained. And then there's cloud services and VPN filtering. Now, it's at this point I'm going to introduce you to the concept that this product has the ability to see all cloud service usage by user across your entire network. Now, if I was doing a one-to-one demo with everybody, I would typically at this point ask a few questions. Do you allow cloud services in your environment? If so, do you feel you have visibility into those cloud services? More so, do you allow corporate cloud services in your environment? And do you feel you have visibility into those corporate cloud services from a user-based perspective? This product is going to give you complete visibility into all cloud service usage by your users and corporate cloud service capability. Now, from a technical perspective, how do we achieve that? Typically, the product achieves an understanding and insight into user usage of cloud services using DNS logs, firewall logs, and API plugins. So it has API plugins for the main cloud services, so Office 365. In fact, it's one of the only few ones that will give you visibility from an Office 365 perspective. So what do I mean by that? If somebody is logged on to Office 365 from an internet cafe in an obscure location and they haven't authenticated to your network, this product is still going to show you what they were up to on that particular cloud services. So if I drill into a well-known one, Dropbox, I'll show you what type of visibility you get. You can see the user, you can see the user usage over time. This over here can be changed to show actual data loss, I guess, what I mean by data loss or data transfer. For example, 100 meg or 2 gig of data today. This is the only graph I'm probably going to introduce you to, and the reason I introduce you to this is because I want to introduce you to the word of baselining. The product automatically baselines, it automatically gets an understanding for users over time, and that word baselining will be used a lot later on in this demo. So, incidence. Incidence is a very American term for alerts. Again, this product only alerts on the alerts that matter. Effectively, what you're seeing here is the real live instance of this product running in the Rapid7 environment. And typically, we're an organization of about 600 or 700 people, and on average, we get about anywhere between 2 to half a dozen alerts. Now, how does the product know to only alert on the alerts that matter? It is because of the rules that we create. Now take your mind back to Metasploit and the open source community of over 200,000 people using the product, and additionally our internal pen testers. That allows us to create these rules for you and automatically fine-tune these rules for you. Now those of you that are working with SIMs, we've estimated that this amount of rule configuration or setting and configuration and fine-tuning would take the average system administrator at least 18 months to create with a SIM. We are constantly updating these rules as a general rule of thumb every 3 to 6 days or faster as is needed. However, a system administrator working with a SIM to start fine-tuning these rules would take on average between 3 to 6 months. So this is how the product is able to alert you only on the alerts that matter. And this brings me back to our understanding of the attacker mindset. Because of Metasploit, we understand the attacker mindset. We fine-tune these rules for you, and in doing so, effectively free you up to do what you need to do, and the product knows to alert only on the alerts that matter. If I take you now back to incidents, alerts, I'm going to bring you down to phishing. Phishing's a good one. We're all a little bit concerned about it at this stage of the game. However, very few people have visibility, or very few organizations have visibility into when there is a phishing campaign in their network or a spear phishing campaign on their network. If they become aware of a phishing campaign or spear phishing campaign, organizations generally chase their tails, running around trying to deal with it, and it's a lot of log analysis to see which users, exchange log analysis to see which users have effectively received that phishing campaign, and or if there is a spear phishing campaign. If this product picks up on a phishing campaign, it is because it has got through your email gateway, it has got through your spam filters, and it's inside your environment, and you most definitely want to know about it. Now, how does the product know to pick up on a phishing campaign and a spear phishing campaign? So at this point, I'm going to highlight, again, the innovative nature of the product. The product in its back end is very much plugging into community threat feeds, so things like Google Safe Browsing, PhishTank. It is also clever enough to work out where there is a malformed link in an email. So for example, if it sees www.rapid7.co instead of rapid7.com, it associates it with a potential phishing campaign. From a spear phishing campaign, it is constantly scouring in the back end all new DNS registrations across the globe. If it sees a new DNS registration and it sees a link associated with that new DNS registration, it will flag it as a possible spear phishing campaign. Again, I'm now going to show you how easy the product is to use. When there is a phishing campaign in your environment, to see, as I mentioned, who has received that email and try and stop them from clicking on the link, it could be quite difficult. It's a lot of log analysis and poring over logs, exchange logs, for example. With us, it's going to highlight the user, it's going to highlight the link, it's going to highlight the URL, and more importantly, it's going to alert you as to how it picked up on that potential malicious phishing campaign. Now, as I said, it's important to know every single user that has received that particular link, and it is this simple. All you would need to do is highlight the link and drag and drag and drop the link to the search function. It will find the link, it will find the site. If you click on the link, it's going to show you every user that has potentially received the link. Now, there's a few of you in the audience probably thinking, well, what happens if they click on the link? Is the product going to alert then? Yes, it will. It will alert you in an alert that the user has clicked on the potential malicious phishing link. The reason I show phishing at this point is everybody knows it. I wanted to highlight the innovative nature of the product and how easy this product is to actually use and free you up to do the things you need to do. Now, if I take you back to settings, I'm going to bring you down to unknown IP addresses. Now, unfortunately, because this is effectively the demo environment, which is a spin-off of our live environment, there's certain things I can't show you. However, I'm going to talk you through it. What you would see with unknown IP addresses is balls or round kind of circles with IP addresses that are literally floating around on your network. The reason I highlight this is what the product is doing is it's looking at the three main foundation event sources, which are AD, LDAP, and Active Directory. If it sees a user it's going to flag it as a potential security threat. It needs to see an IP address associated with the user and or asset. Why? Your DHCP servers are sending out leases at present. Those IP addresses tend to get lost in the ether sometimes and float around your network. What an attacker is going to do is they're going to come, get on your network, and they're going to find these IP addresses. They're going to bind to these IP addresses because they are legitimate and it allows them to hide further. So what I'm highlighting here is the product has a dual purpose. Not only is the product looking for or showing you users as a priority and looking for anomalous user behavior, but it is also teaching you to clean up your network, and it will do that straight out of the bat. It will do it straight away as you install it. It will start to highlight these security flaws and start teaching you how to clean up your network. Additionally, the product has the ability to create different zones and create policies in those zones. So, for example, you might have a production zone, or you might have a development zone, or a financial zone, and those zones should never cross over. If account information from one zone goes to another zone, you might want to get an alert on that. The product has the ability to segment your network and create different zones across your network. I'm now going to introduce you to how the product is deployed in the Rapid7 environment. This always takes 1 or 2 seconds. Okay, as you can see, there are our three main foundation event sources that I've been talking about. And there's all the nice to haves. Just going to quit that. And there's all the nice to haves. Now, if you have a bespoke foundation event source that we don't support, and the product supports a lot of event sources. So if I show you firewall support, there's a listing of all the firewalls we support. However, if the product doesn't support an event source, or you have a bespoke event source, again, the product is designed very innovatively. So all you would need to do is go to Rapid7 in that case, click on the plus sign, choose Rapid7 generic syslog, give it any name you want, choose the protocol, tell us the port number, and forward us the logs. The product will not try and understand or parse those logs. What it will do is it will compress the log. We will receive the log. Once we receive the log, our engineers will train the collector to parse the log for you. That's typically within a 7 to 10-day working cycle. So what I'm saying is the product supports a lot of event sources. However, it's continuously learning and it's continuously growing through the help of you, our customers. Now, from a deployment perspective, typically, this product is designed to be very easy to deploy. What you would do on initial install is install a collector, very lightweight. It can be installed on any server, or it can be installed on a virtual machine, on a virtual server. Typically, 2 gig of memory is enough, but I would recommend 4. Once you've installed that collector then plugs into these event sources. We can have organizations of upwards of 5,000 users, provided change control requests are in place and all foundation event sources are supported, typically up and running within less than an hour. The product is also cleverly designed to auto-config, so what it will do is it will go out and it will find all your event sources for you, and then it will ask you if you want to plug them in. So it makes deployment very, very simple. If you want to download more than one collector, it is that simple. At this point, though, I'm going to introduce you to honeypots. As you all know, a honeypot is designed to sniff out attackers on a network, so a fake machine. This product can download as many collectors or as many honeypots as you like. Call them whatever you like. So in the case of Sony, passwords, financial systems, email accounts, payroll system. Everybody wants to know what everybody else is getting paid. Effectively, they are just virtual machines. Once you download them, install them, they connect themselves directly to the UserInsight console. They get an IP address from your DHCP server, and they just sit there quietly waiting for people to scan your network, start looking for things. So effectively, people that shouldn't be touching that machine. Additionally, the product quite cleverly has the ability to create honey users. Again, call this super administrator and watch people try and brute force attack the password. Coming this quarter, it's very close to finishing, is what we are now terming honey credentials. The product has the ability to see every single endpoint on your network. In fact, it does see every single endpoint on your network. We believe endpoint is very, very important in the equation, and I'm going to discuss that in a lot more detail a little later in this demo. However, because we see each and every single endpoint in your environment, the product will be able to inject fake credentials directly into memory on endpoints, so fake usernames and passwords. Because what an attacker is going to do is when they get onto your network, they are effectively going to dump credentials straight out of memory, and they're going to use those credentials. In this case, they're going to be getting fake credentials, obviously tied back to the UserInsight console, and it's going to be alerting you. So you want to take note. It's quite an innovative feature, and again, showing the innovative nature of the product. If I take you back to the home screen, just a general overview, we've discussed the top 5 riskiest users over here. Here's the top alert for the day. We've discussed Ingress. There's users on the watch list, and obviously the product has the ability to see all domain admin and domain admin accounts across your network. Let's take a look now at company numbers. As you can see, at Rapid7 at present, we've got approximately 633 active users. From a high level, you can see those users by virus alert, vulnerabilities, firewall activity, web proxy, advanced malware alerts. I'm going to talk about 2. I'm going to talk about virus alerts, and I'm going to talk about advanced malware alerts. If, from a virus alerts perspective, you see a spike like that, again, not good. You want to put up and take note. Now, again, it's about log correlation and analytics, and it's about log correlation and analytics made simple. This is the way it should have been. If you see a spike like that and you want to see which users are involved, all you need to do is that, and it will take you straight there. If you want to start to compare users in that spike, it is that, again, that simple. If I now take you down to advanced malware alerts, the product has very strong, and I can't show you this again because it's the demo environment, but the product has very strong ties with things like FireEye and Power Alta Wildfire. We are able to give their process analysis and their sandboxing of processes user-based contextualized information, which is a very powerful story to tie the process back to the user and, in doing so, the asset. However, this product also has the ability to see unique processes on endpoints. It sees all unique processes on endpoints. It's a very powerful story. We recently had a user experience or a customer experience in the Nordics. This particular customer, who's now a reference customer of ours, was busy POCing, is busy trialing the product. He'd been trialing it for approximately 3 weeks. We asked him what it was going to take for him to purchase the product. He's quite a fastidious and a very, very focused individual, very good system admin. He said, I want this product to pick up on something that every single one of my other systems completely misses. Every one of my other security systems completely misses. Good point, we said, and we agreed. And he to this day says that we rigged it. We didn't. But 20 minutes later, we got an advanced malware alert for a user's machine in Paris. In that meeting, within 10 minutes, we were able to show him why Trend Micro, which is a very good antivirus system, had missed that particular threat. We were able to show him what site this user had clicked on. We were able to show where this user was redirected to geographically in the world to become further infected. So what am I saying here? Because the product is able to see unique processes on endpoints, it is able to give you additional protection against advanced persistent threats, 0 day, and it's also a nice stopgap and a nice filler to pick up what your traditional antivirus system will miss. Now, how does it do it? because it's looking at the endpoint, sees the unique process, it gets the MD5 checksum and the SH1 hash for that particular unique process, and then what it does is it ties it back to a virus total score. So if you look over here, we have the MD5 checksum for that particular unique process, we get the SH1 hash, and then we do that. So we're giving you that advanced persistent threat, the 0-day, and coverage which your traditional antivirus system will miss. Additionally, when you have an attacker on your network and they start dropping malware, this product is going to pick up on that activity. So I'm now going to explain to you exactly how the product works. Once I've done that, I'm going to actually show you a real live investigation of how beneficial this product could be when you do start to see malicious activity on your network. So let's discuss how the product works in two scenarios. Scenario 1 is going to be non-expiring users and administrators, and scenario 2 is going to be shared accounts and linked accounts. So scenario 1, non-expiring users and administrators. This non-expiring users used to be termed service accounts. What the product was originally doing was it was looking for all service account activity on your network. Why? Service accounts are used by machines, as you all know. They have a username and password, and a password set to probably never expire. More so, if somebody starts logging in with a service account or using a service account from a remote location, you most definitely want to be alerted to that type of activity. What we started to notice, though, was that we would install the product on quite large sites, 10,000 upwards, and we would see 3,000 to 4,000 service accounts. So again, what this product was doing is it was teaching the system administrator that there were lots of accounts on their network with passwords set to never expire, and that users were using those service accounts. So what we did was we kind of figured out that we need to change the name to non-expiring users, and we needed to teach the product to be able to differentiate by what is an actual service account and what is actually a user account with a password set to never expire. So as you can see now, the product is able to see all service accounts across the network. It's able to pick up on disabled service accounts for obvious reasons. An attacker will come along, they will re-enable that service account because they're quiet and nobody's watching them. The product also has the ability to automatically, as I said, pick up on service accounts. However, if it doesn't and you want to add a service account manually, all you would need to do is click on that little Android. As I said earlier, if you want to add a user to a watch list or an account to a watch list, it is that simple. All you would need to do is click there. But as you can see over here, the product is able to see service accounts and user accounts with passwords set to never expire. If I then go to active over there, and I click on admin, what we effectively have there are two admin accounts with passwords set to never expire. And that is a massive, huge red flag and security flaw on your network. So again, this is a product highlighting how you've got a massive security problem there, and it's again teaching you to clean up your environment. We had a customer in Germany that it was a university. There were two system administrators who had locked down their network quite sufficiently, but strangely enough, because there were only two of them, they had their passwords set to never expire, and they thought they were covered. When they saw this, it made them sit up and take note. As soon as you plug the product into LDAP, you will see all domain admin privileged by user. As soon as you plug the product into Active Directory, you're going to see any admin activity by user. Again, it's about log correlation and analytics. So for example, we've got a spike over there. They might be resetting passwords. They might be enabling accounts. You might want to go directly to that spike to see that particular activity. All you would need to do is that, and it will take you straight there. Now, scenario 2. This is where the product gets very innovative, and this is where the endpoint stuff comes in, the shared accounts, and linked account information. In the early development stages or the early development days of this product, we discovered that we had to go directly to source to get information. You have to go to endpoints to see what is actually going on in your environment. But what we discovered was that if you take an event log off an endpoint and you move it somewhere else, so for example, you move it to an AD server or a syslog server, you effectively lose too much user-based contextualized information. We realized we had to go directly to source and we had to get the information directly from the endpoint. In doing so, what we're able to see is things like compromised credentials, impersonations, escalation of privilege, lateral movement, moving from machine to machine, unique processes, so dropping of keyloggers and scrapers, and who has local administrative rights on their machine and what they are doing with those local administrative rights, which is a very powerful story. Now, for those of you that are more technically inclined in the audience, you are going to ask, but surely that is a bandwidth issue across my network. What we've done is we've borrowed technology from our Nexpose vulnerability management scanner. Now, for those of you that don't know Nexpose, it is a world-leading vulnerability scanner. It is in the right quadrant on the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and it's got great scanning capabilities. The product is able to, borrowing the scanning technology or the scanning code, it is able to scan your entire network without the need for an agent, and it is just a WMI call. Typically, that information is about 20 to 40 claim size per hour per machine. We have this technology deployed in organizations of 100,000 users plus with no bandwidth issues. When the product pulls an event log off an endpoint, it will top and tail that log and only take the information it needs. When it goes back again to scan that machine, it will incrementally look for changes. So it's constantly fine-tuning that bandwidth requirement. Now, because we're able to pull that endpoint event log information, we get shared accounts and linked accounts. Linked accounts is probably the most important, so I'm going to talk about that, and then I'm briefly going to go to shared accounts. Linked accounts. What do I mean by a linked account? A linked account would effectively be me sitting on my local machine with a local user account. I then escalate my privilege to become an administrator. What the product is doing is it's able to see the local user account and the administrative account as being linked, and then it tries to establish whether or not the person that is using that linked account is in actual fact or indeed the correct person to be using it. Now, for those of you that didn't quite grasp what I said, I'm going to show you how that is pertinent in an investigation, and it's going to make a lot more sense. If I now talk about shared account information, this again is the product teaching you to clean up your environment. So it is not a red flag, it is a yellow flag. As system administrators or your system administrators are constantly creating accounts in AD, deleting accounts, disabling accounts, users are constantly sharing accounts. It becomes messy over time. So you get this type of scenario, 59 source accounts all attaching to one single account. Best way to visualize that would be multiple Windows folders all in a row, 59 of them in this case, all attaching with arrows down to one single account. Why is this a yellow flag and not a red flag? This type of stuff is great for brute force attacking. If I use 59 accounts to attack one single administrative account, I'm going to get that password a lot faster. So again, product teaching you to clean up your environment. So let me now introduce you to the first player or the first user, and then I'm going to show you the investigation. Let's take a look at the type of information you would get on a user. Welcome to Mr. George Anderson. Again, log correlation and analytics. Every time you type a user's name in, you're going to see the same format and the same log display. We can see, for example, when that user successfully or failed to log into the network, you will see any incidents related to that user. You will see how that user is authenticating to the network. So in this case, Active Directory, and here a cloud service. Here's the linked account information I was talking about because of the endpoint event log, and I'll explain this in a little bit more detail. It understands the user's asset usage, and it works out the user's primary asset over time. It will also map that asset usage across the network for you. It also has the ability to, much like a watched user, create a restricted asset, which is effectively a watched asset. So if you mark or donate an asset has been restricted, the more people that use it, the more alerts you'll be getting. You can see all the users' cloud services usage. You can see their application usage. You can also see their mobile phone usage. As I said, it's a user behavioral analytics tool, so you'll get an understanding for their company location, their home location, and if they come in from any other locations. You can see their VPN access. If you're running our Nexpose product, you'll be able to see vulnerabilities on their asset and tie it back to the user, so you can start to build an understanding for what's going on with the user, which is also, again, a very powerful story. And if you're running an IDS, you will see any IDS information relating back to the user. Now, a little bit of an investigation, a little bit of a story. This user, George Anderson, has just generated an email alert. And that email alert is that he's using the Kerberos vulnerability exploit to escalate his privilege and impersonate a user by the name of Virginia Gonzalez. For those of you that are male, you're sitting with your wives, and for those of you that are female in the audience, you're sitting with your husband, and you get this alert. You're not happy. You get up, you go to the men's or the ladies, and you log in using your phone to take a look at this particular alert a little bit deeper. There it is, Kerberos vulnerability exploit. The first thing you're going to do as an incident responder is you're going to then take a look at this linked account information. So from the linked account information, we can see that this user, George Anderson, has local administrative rights on his machine. We can also see that this user, George Anderson, is impersonating user Virginia Gonzalez, and we know that he's used the Kerberos vulnerability exploit to do that. We can also see that this user, George Anderson, is impersonating user Sam Adams, who's part of the domain admin group. How do I know that's a domain admin group, and how do I know that's a local administrative privilege? That's a naming convention that we have at Rapid7. So we're a little bit concerned about this user. Things aren't quite working out. Now, we know that this user works very closely with a lady by the name of Martha Nelson. Martha Nelson reports to George Anderson. The reason I'm going to introduce you to Martha is because I want to show you, again, it follows the same log format for every single user. That's how simple it is. So we can see that Martha Nelson reports to George Anderson. Are there any incidents relating to Martha? Yes, they are. Now, typically what you would be doing is you would also be going to take a look at their asset information. How is that user using their asset? So if we take a look at Martha Nelson's primary asset, we're looking for any incidents. Do we get any incidents? Yes, we do. What does the mapping of Martha's machine look like across the network? If I move to any of these bubbles, you will see it highlights below. If I go to this bubble over here, we can see that user Virginia Gonzalez is attaching to Martha's machine, who's attaching to other assets on the network. That's an interesting picture. We know that George Anderson has used the Kerberos vulnerability exploit to impersonate user Virginia Gonzalez. We can see Virginia attaching to Martha's machine and then moving laterally across the machine, across the network. So we're not happy with George. We want to investigate George. So to investigate George, all we would need to do is, again, go back to George, choose one of the alerts you wish to investigate. In this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to investigate the lateral movement. So to kick off an investigation, all I would need to do in the product is click Investigate. And the product's going to load a 3-day timeline window, a day before the incident and a day after the incident. Now, I can't stress this enough. This product is designed for us to maintain the log for you. If you, as a potential customer or an existing customer, want to start investigating something that happened 10 years ago, those logs will always be there. For those of you that are managing SIMs at present, you know what a nightmare that can potentially be. SIMs create lots of logs, which means you have to create more backups, more tape infrastructure, you run out of tape, more tape, eventually you have to start deleting logs, and that's exactly what an attacker wants you to do. With us, that problem is out of the equation. Now, as you can see, it's loading George Anderson, and it's loading every asset he's associated with, and I'm talking about logs. Now, we know Martha's involved. We don't know how Martha's involved. Is it an insider threat? Is it an outsider threat? Is she innocent? Is she guilty? To add Martha's logs to an investigation or to add anything to an investigation, it is that simple. Martha is now part of the investigation. At this point, all I would do is click Save. What the product's going to do is it's going to load a timeline window. And in doing so, in loading that timeline window, what it's going to do is it's going to put the initial investigation point, which is the lateral movement, and then it's going to start to load every single log associated with Martha Nelson, George Anderson, and every single log associated with them. So what I mean by every single log, every single firewall log, every single endpoint log, every single VPN log, every single DNS log, everything that these users have been associated with will be loaded here. Now again, for those of you that manage SIMs or don't have SIMs and do this manually, you know how painful this can be. This type of investigation would typically take anywhere between 6 months to at least a year. And it's this particular product that is doing it in literally 5 minutes. And it was this type of investigation that we were able to show that advanced malware alert in a meeting with a potential customer in less than 10 minutes. When it gets to this point, ladies and gentlemen, all I would need to do is click Sift, and I've got all the information I need to kick off the investigation. If we take a look at the firewall logs, there they are in their rough format. So for those of you that are managing SIMs or doing this manually, that's effectively what you will be seeing, and that's where you will initially be kicking your investigation off. If you want to investigate using those raw logs, they are there and available for you. However, if you want to use these windows to investigate, it's that simple. If you want to start to sift these particular logs over here, again, it is this simple. So for example, who's Doris Rogers? I don't want her logs involved in the investigation. So to remove Doris's logs, all I would need to do is that, and those logs are now removed. To add Doris's logs back, it's that simple, or I can do that. However, I don't even want to do that. We have a firewall spike. Firewall spikes generally tend to be not such great things, particularly from a security perspective. So to start to sift these logs here, all I would need to do is that, and I'm sifting the logs. So effectively, I'm taking those logs out. When I get to a point that I'm happy and comfortable, I add the results to the investigation. I'll call it FW for investigation and click Add. Starting to build up a picture. We know that the Kerberos vulnerability exploit happened somewhere over here. We can see the lateral movement here, but at the same time, we're getting a lot of firewall activity. Let's take a look at the DNS logs. Again, there they are in their raw format. Can kick off the investigation and sift the logs here, or I can do it here. Now, I know that activity happened around about there, so I'm looking for those spikes. Sift the data. Once I'm happy with sifting the data, all I would need to do is click DNS and add to investigation. Starting to see a picture emerge. At this point, you would download the information to a PDF. You would then take it into that George Anderson and Martha Nelson's manager's office, and you would go, I need to talk to you about George. We need to disable his account in AD. We may have to get him in for a bit of a chat. We may have to ask him to leave the building. At this point, I would like to say this. Any organization that says they can deal with compromised credentials, or any vendor that says they can deal with compromised credentials before the fact, or any method for that matter before the fact, is effectively telling a bit of a porky. If an attacker wants to get onto your network, they are going to get onto your network. The key differentiator is you want to see the impersonations, you want to see the escalation of privilege. You want to see the lateral movement, moving from machine to machine. You want to see the unique processes. And you want to be able to investigate this quickly and shut them down. Typically, the average, or the industry standard or average for an attacker living in a network to go undetected is 205 days. It's more like 6 months to a year, if not longer. Would you rather have them on the network for 205 days or for 20 minutes? That is the difference. So there is no silver bullet to dealing with what we're seeing in the market at the moment, but we feel that this is probably as close as you're going to get. And that is a brief introduction to UserInsight. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll now open the floor to any questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? Or are you all happy and completely in awe of what you saw? We'll give it 1 or 2 minutes. Sorry, I've just noticed I have a question section. So I'm just going to go through each of the questions that have been asked via the console. So Dave asks, does UserInsight support the creation of custom dashboards for displays on large team screens, for instance? Dave, no. At present, this is the dashboard that you get. It's not configurable from that perspective at all. However, I can tell you a bit of the roadmap that's coming. The product dashboard is going to slightly change. I also think, if I think of something like Splunk has the ability to plug different apps which are highly configurable from that perspective. In this instance, no, the product, the dashboard is as it stands. All right, next question would be Dave Lindsay. Thank you for the presentation. No questions. Thank you. Dave Haggood asks, does UserInsight support the creation of custom? Oh, there we go. Same one again. Okay, the licensing model for Mark. Mark, it is a subscription-based per-user license. So what do I mean by a per-user license? We're effectively looking for living, breathing human beings. We're not interested in multiple email addresses. We're not interested in multiple instances or multiple objects in AD. We're looking for physical human beings. So typically what we would do with an organization is we would ask the organization how many users they have, and depending on what they came back to us with and what they said, we would take at face value. It's a trust model. So for example, if you came to us and said there were 1,000 physical users in our environment, we would go, great, and we would start to then talk about a 1,000 user licensing model. If, however, on the back end we saw 1,500, we wouldn't really care, to be honest. If we saw 20,000, that might be a little bit of a different, kind of slightly embarrassing conversation. But typically it's a trust model per human being, per user, subscription-based, yearly, ongoing. Okay, so David Lindsay asks, I suppose that one question would be based on pricing structure. Is it by the number of users scanned or a single payment? It's a single yearly payment, and it's again by user, and by how many users you tell us there actually are. I hope that answered the questions. By all means, feel free to ask any others. And Robin, thank you very much. We look forward to supporting you too. Thanks, Mark. Much appreciated. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'm sure Andy and the Foursys team would be happy to take any calls. They can redirect those questions to me. I'm happy to work with you and the Foursys guys. As I said, my name is Clive Weinstein. I can be reached on Clive_Weinstein, that's spelled WAINSTEIN at rapid7.com. Obviously, Foursys are our preferred partner, and we will work very closely with them. So if you do contact me directly, I will make sure that myself and a Foursys representative look after you moving forward. I thank you very much for your time, everybody. I hope you found it beneficial, and I hope you saw how UserInsight could be advantageous in your environment. Thank you.